Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our Cobram Estate Extra Virgin Olive Oil tasting. My name is Rosie, and I'll be the host for tonight. We're really excited to have everyone and really hope that this will be a fun and educational event. Please use the chat function in the bottom of the screen to chat amongst yourselves and talk about the tasting. And then also feel free to use the Q&A section for more formal questions. Our team will be answering them as we go along, and then we'll have a formal session at the end for questions. The experience should last about an hour, and we'll be following up tomorrow with a link to tonight's presentation, as well as announcing the winner of our one-year supply of Cobram Estate Extra Virgin Olive Oil. I'd like to introduce our two panelists tonight. Starting off, we have Cobram Estate's Chief Olive Oil Maker and co-CEO Leandro Ravetti, and he is paired with our partner Kristen Kirkpatrick, who is a nutritionist with Cleveland Clinic, a registered dietitian, published author, and contributor to the Today Show. So we're super excited to get going. So with that, I'll kick it over to Leandro.
Thank you, Rosie, and thank you very much to all of you for being with us this afternoon or evening, depending on where you are. I promise it will be a fun night, but just before we get into the tasting, I'll give you a quick summary of who we are and a bit of a one-on-one tour on how the oils that we're going to taste are produced, as it is actually very relevant when I have to explain the quality and flavor of extra virgin olive oil. The company, Cobram Estate, was founded in Australia by two farm college friends, Paul Reed and Rob McGavin. You can see them in the photo. And they both actually, that was all the way back in 1997. They both remain involved with the business and are two of our most than 2,500 shareholders that we have. Many of those shareholders actually have been with us since the very beginning. And we are today the largest vertically integrated olive farmers in the world, with an annual production of olive oil larger than probably many well-known countries or regions like France or Israel or Tuscany. If we move to the next slide, going back probably about 20 years ago, when Cobram Estate started, high-quality extra virgin olive oil was actually a rare thing, and almost non-existent outside some of the very traditional producing regions. What we have done with Cobram Estate was to, in a very simple way, bringing high-quality extra virgin olive oil to everyday users and at everyday prices, particularly for those in new markets like in Australia and the USA. We can go to the next slide, where we can see that as a company, and this is probably one of the things that is quite unique from us. So we're moving to the next slide. Both in Australia and the USA, we are, I don't think that the slide is changing, sorry. Oh, thank you. Both in Australia and the USA, we are a fully vertically integrated company, and we look after the product truly from tree to table. We manage the nurseries where the trees are propagated. We plant and grow those trees in our grows. We harvest the fruit, mill it into oil, test that oil in our independently accredited laboratories. We bottle it and we deliver it directly to you, having full control over the quality and the traceability of the product at all times. This is actually a very unique situation in the olive industry, as probably most of the brands that you can find in your local store do not own really a mill or a single olive tree. This is, seems rare, but that is the case. Move to the next slide. Probably most importantly, having this total control over the entire process allows us also to produce some of the best and most awarded oils in the world. I think if we move to the next slide, yes, thank you. You can see that the list there, but our oils from Australia and California have won every important international competition and really piled up more gold medals than almost any other brand in the world. We move to the next slide and probably to the next one there. You obviously know us and are here tonight for our Cobram Estate extra virgin olive oil brand, but I wanted to share with you some of the probably lesser known brands like our Stone and Grove olive teas and our Wellgrow supplement brand, because they are a very important part of our sustainability and zero waste story. Just to give you an idea, only 0.1% of our current waste streams from all our sites combined ends up in a landfill, which really leaves us using, give us the leaves to, use to produce our teas or mulch for soil improvement. Our peat is largely used as a renewable source of energy, and the leftovers of the pulp, or pomace as we call it, of the fruit is used as an organic fertilizer, animal feed, or as renewable energy source too. I think in the next slide, you see a bit of a scheme of what I've been talking about and all that sort of integration and really the full use of everything that we produce from our farms. We move to the next slide. Producing really high quality olive oil is a very simple process, but by no means easy, but certainly pretty simple. Extra virgin olive oil is truly the natural juice of the olive, and I'll show you now how natural actually this entire process is. Move to the next slide. Olives in California are at full bloom in early May, and it takes some 6 months from those olives that just set straight after the flowering to grow and to be ready to harvest, which typically happens in the month of November. Picking the olives at the perfect time is one of the keys for extra virgin olive oil quality. And that mostly happens when the fruit really starts changing color from that green to yellowish green, or even with some purple hues in the skin. Yes, every olive is green and finishes black. The ideal for olives, for oil, is actually to pick it somewhere in the middle of that process. The flavors that we're going to taste from the different oils are mainly the result of the characteristics of those different varieties, the growing environments, and the time of harvest. The earlier that we pick the fruit, the more robust the oils are going to be. And when the fruit is ready, we use our harvesters to gently pick the fruit and very quickly from the trees, delivering them straight into trailers, so they never really ever touch the ground. So once we start harvesting, the process goes on and on, day and night, 24 hours a day, and 7 days a week until we finish. That freshly picked fruit is then taken very quickly to our mills within an hour or two. And as we can see in the next slide, after arriving to the mill, the fruit is then washed and moved ready to be crushed. This crushing process in the old days used to be done by those large stone wheels that you probably saw in the history books, but nowadays it's done with a much cleaner and efficient hammer mill that turns the olives into some sort of tapenade. That fruit paste that you can see in the photo of your right is then gently mixed for about 45 minutes to an hour to allow the little droplets of oil to merge into a larger phase of oil that we can see they are floating really on top of the paste, and that makes the separation quite easy. This is also a very important step when it comes down to flavor, as it is during this kneading or mixing process that the extra virgin olive oil is infused with the natural flavors and all the healthy components that are present in the olive fruit. Because of that, the fresher and the higher the quality of the fruit used, obviously the healthier and the tastier the oils are going to be. To the next slide. Once the paste is ready, it's then just simply and naturally pressed in those horizontal centrifuges that you see in the photo there, allowing the extra virgin olive oil to be separated from the remaining pulp of the fruit. That's it. Nothing else is added or done to that oil until you use it at home. It is truly the juice of the olives. In the next slide, we see that the only thing that happens with that oil afterwards is that we just keep it in our stainless steel storage tanks under nitrogen and temperature control to protect the freshness of the oil until we need to pack it ready to dispatch to the supermarket shelves. And as we can see in the next slide, we also do the bottling. We use dark bottles to protect the oil quality from light, and we flush the bottle with nitrogen in the headspace to prevent any oxidation until the moment that you open the bottle, to actually keep really all those flavors, all those health components as intact as possible. In the next slide, I'm just going to talk a little bit about olive oil names because they can actually be a bit confusing, and I'll try to make it simple for you. Any fruit, any olive fruit that is processed as I have just explained, so picked from the trees and crushed mechanically and just centrifuged and separated the oil, produces what the industry call natural oils. If the fruit used was of the highest quality and it was processed really quickly, the resulting natural oil is classified as extra virgin. But if the fruit wasn't so great because there was too much time between picking and processing, or the fruit had some fermentations, we have lower quality oils that are called virgin. And then if the fruit was really in a bad condition, it's called lampante. That sort of is coming from the old days that oil used to be burnt in lamps. That doesn't happen anymore. Regretfully, lampante oils or these bad quality oils still represent nearly 50% of the olive oils produced around the world. In our company, we produce more than 90% of the oils are extra virgin, but around the world, nearly 50% of the oils are not really of good quality, and they need to be refined, what we call the industry call refine them, to make them suitable for human consumption. Regretfully, this refining process, which is a similar thing that happens to other seed oils like sunflower or corn or canola, strips them from all the flavor and the health attributes, and they are sold under some misleading names that you may find as pure olive oil or extra light olive oil or just simply olive oil. So in very simple terms, extra virgin olive oil is the highest quality of all oils and the only one delivering all the great flavors and health attributes that this oil is famous for, that we're going to be tasting today, and that Kirsten is then going to be sort of talking about. Then in the next slide, or the next two slides, what we can see, and I'd like to touch on, is that even within the extra virgin olive oils, it is not always easy to find a genuine high quality oil. So how do we do it then? Because obviously you are not able to taste the oils before buying the oil from the shelf. So like with many other fresh products, buying local from a trusted source, and when the brand belongs to the grower, is a great way of guaranteeing that you will be receiving the quality that you're paying for. The two seals that you can see in the bottom right-hand corner are a great reassurance that the product is Californian and of the highest quality. Also, always check for harvest date in the bottle and buy oil that was processed no more than 12 to 14 months earlier. So ideally now in California or in the US, you'll be looking for a harvest 2022 that happened back in November last year. If there is no indication of harvest date in the bottle, you have to be suspicious that probably is a blend of much older oils. Now, I think I cover a bit of that 101 that I wanted to go, and let's get into the fun part. We'll do the tasting. I'm sure that you all have your kits ready. If you want, also you can have just a little piece of bread, or perhaps some slices of apple or a glass of water, or still or sparkling, perhaps better, to help us rinse the palate between each of the tastings. It is fun, it's easy. You just have to trust your taste and your smell. But let's start with the first oil as I actually explain the process about how it works. The first oil that we're going to be tasting today is our mild oil. So it's this oil that has one drop of intensity. It's kind of like a light green color on the bottom of the label. We open the bottle, we take one of the caps that we have, and we pour about, let's say, half an inch of that oil in the cap. And what we're going to be doing is using one of our hands to warm up the oil, and the other hand to actually cover the cap to be able to trap all those aromas as they are sort of starting to release. You can also tilt the cap so that the oil is coating a little bit of the sides of the cap as well, to get a larger surface and more aromas sort of being released. What we're going to do first is we're going to smell the oil, and a very important thing to distinguish between high quality olive oils and not so good quality olive oils is the freshness of the aromas. If when you smell the oil, what you smell reminds you of something fresh, could be a fresh fruit, a fresh vegetable, fresh cut grass, anything that is fresh is a good indication of high quality olive oils. If what you smell is not fresh, if it reminds you of something stale, something old, something humid, musty, moldy, all those are indications that there's something wrong with the oil. So again, trust your smell in the first case. Let's go with this one. What we get in this oil, definitely some notes. They're actually probably the first thing to highlight. They're actually quite subtle notes. You don't get anything far too strong. Usually extremely strong notes are linked with something wrong with the oil. Normally the fresh notes of extra virgin olive oil are actually quite subtle. In this case, we've got some hints of fresh cut grass. There's a little bit of vanilla. There's a little bit of some sweet fruits, a little bit of banana, a little bit of red apple. Probably as I'm describing it, it gets a little bit easier. Oh yes, I can get this or I can get that. It's important that you sort of go after your own memory of aromas. This is a little bit, if we have to do the comparison with wines, this would be equivalent to like a Pinot Grigio or a Riesling, quite a refreshing, lighter type of white wine. And then the second step that we do is we take a sip of this oil. We just have enough oil to coat our mouth and perhaps to end up drinking a tiny little bit. The thing that we get in the mouth and what we're after to do in the mouth are probably 2 or 3 things. The first one is the mouth feel. Does the oil feel quite greasy in the mouth, or it leaves the mouth with a fairly clean feeling? By now, after probably 5-10 seconds, the mouth feels actually quite clean. So there's no oily feeling, there's no oily residue. That is a good indication of high quality extra virgin olive oil. And the other things that you will start noticing with fresh extra virgin olive oils are 2 main attributes, which we describe as bitterness and pungency. The pungency is probably what you felt with this oil, a little bit of that peppery feeling on the back of your throat. This is actually very, very important because that feeling is mainly driven by the natural antioxidants in extra virgin olive oil. So the more peppery, the more pungent that it feels on the back of your throat, the higher the level of natural antioxidants in olive oil. And from the health perspective, the better it is for you. And the same happens with the bitterness, which you're going to start feeling as a bit of a drying, astringent sensation on the side of your tongue, a bit like when you drink a cup of black tea. In this case, this oil is a bit of a mild to medium. There's a little bit of pepperiness on the back, and not really much bitterness, quite some subtle sweet aromas on the nose. This type of oil goes really, really well with relatively mild flavor foods, for example, fish, seafood, where you don't want the oil to be too overpowering and cover certainly the flavor of the food that we are actually having. Really quite an interesting trick or dessert to do with an oil like this. It's a dessert that is quite common in Spain. You can actually peel a fresh orange. We can slice it very thinly. We pour a fair bit of oil like this on top, dust a little bit of cinnamon, perhaps a little bit more sugar if the orange is not a particularly sweet one, and then you just have it. What you're going to be amazed is that combination of the oil with the cinnamon and the orange makes the fruit actually taste a lot more like pastry. So it gives a lot more richness about it. It's actually quite an interesting combination that not many people would probably think about, but actually shows the versatility of some of these oils. Now, this is a moment where you could actually have a little bit of bread or a little bit of sip of water that helps you to rinse the oil through. And we will go then to the next oil to try, which is our classic. It's the one that has the 2 drops of intensity. It's more of a medium style oil with a medium green on the bottom of the bottle. And we repeat the same process. We pour a little bit of oil in the cap. In this case, we're using kind of like whitish transparent caps. In the official tasting panels the tasters will use blue caps. So the tasters cannot see the color of the oil, because the color of the oil is not relevant to quality. You can have some really great green oils or really great, golden oils or anything in between, and the opposite is also true. So to avoid any influence of the color, normally official tasters will taste in blue cups, not to be able to, see the color. We repeat the same process. This is really quite interesting. It's clearly a bit of a different style of oil than the previous one that we had. There's not that many sweet aromas really coming through, and some of the aromas that we're getting a little bit greener, a little bit more stringent. There's one dominant aroma that is fairly typical, is around the green tomato fruit, or green tomato leaves, tomato bush, could be a bit of fig leaves. Those sort of relatively green, astringent notes, they're going to become even more dominant and obvious when we actually take a sip of the oil. This sucking of air that I'm doing in between my teeth, what the Italians call stripaggio, is a way of kind of like spraying the oil inside your mouth. So you're getting a little bit of the aromas through the back of your nose as well. So you're really combining what you smell through the front and what you're getting through the back. Lots of these really green tomato notes, bit more grassy, a little bit, probably same level of pepperiness, perhaps a little bit more peppery, but probably what we start feeling is a bit of that stringency on the side of the tongue. Probably you're feeling that almost your mouth is salivating a little bit more. That sort of is that astringency, similar to what happens with those red wines that are quite large in tannins. It's kind of this intermediate oil, again, very fresh in the mouthfeel. It's a quite versatile oil, especially because of those tomato green notes. It's an oil that goes really well with a lot of typical style Mediterranean, cooking, lots of different salads, sauces. And of course, for example, an oil like this would go perfectly well with a caprese salad, where you have, let's say, a soft cheese like bocconcini or a burrata, or a mozzarella, or fresh mozzarella. You got the basil and you got the tomato. So essentially the tomato notes and the oil, with the green notes of the oil plus the fattiness in the oil, ties up with the fattiness of the cheese, the green notes of the basil, and the tomato notes. So it's a perfect complement and a perfect way of actually marrying all those flavors together. It's a very versatile oil, a really good example of a medium style. Now, we are going to be moving now to the next oil, one step up in the intensity. This is our robust oil, dark green, 3 drops. Usually the questions happen in terms of, okay, how do we produce all the different oils? Well, 2 different ways. Like with wines, different varieties of olives produce very different styles of oil. Like in the first oil that we tasted, the main variety in that blend is called Arbequina. It's very small fruit. The second oil is Picual, and this oil is a variety originally from Italy called Coratina. We're going to be doing the same. We're going to put this. And the other thing that has an impact on the style of oil is when the fruit is picked. The earlier that we pick in the season, the greener that the fruit is, the more robust, the more peppery, the more bitter the oils are going to be. The later that we harvest in the season, we tend to have a bit more fruity flavors, sweeter flavors, and less pungency, less bitterness. Filled in this oil. This is actually one of my personal favorites in terms of style and smell, but it becomes a very, very personal thing. And again, as I'm trying to explain, perhaps it goes with different type of cooking and pairing of food. Again, fresh aromas, but of a different style, again, in comparison with the others. No sweet notes, no sweet ripe fruit, like in the first case, not so much of that tomato, like in the second case. This is more of what we may call a sharper, greener oil with more notes of fresh cut grass. There's some other green notes which I'll describe, and probably when we taste it, it's going to be easier to get it as well, of green almonds. It almost tastes like marzipan, that almond paste that you may actually have, a bit like green apples. So lots of different green notes actually coming through. Again, now it's developing. This oil is clear, even bitter than the previous one. So this is what we may call a more robust oil. You're probably going to be coughing. It's quite interesting. One of those natural antioxidants in which are unique to extra virgin olive oil is called oleocanthal, and it has some properties actually quite similar to ibuprofen. It is actually an anti-inflammatory, natural anti-inflammatory. And in fact, ibuprofen will have exactly the same impact on our receptors here, just getting that tingling, that peppery sensation. This one almost have like a chili sort of type of feeling, as if you had some Mexican food, because it's almost happening all around your mouth. It's actually quite active around, so lots of antioxidants, probably almost more than double the amount of antioxidant that we would have in the first oil. This would be equivalent in the world of wines. It would be equivalent to like a Zinfandel, like a fairly big, red wine. It goes really well with the strongly flavored foods, pairing with red meats, in stews, but also quite interesting, these oils that are quite peppery, quite bitter, and sometimes you may think, oh, perhaps I'm not so sure if I really enjoy the bitterness and pungency. I always have to remind you that, olive oil will have to be used in the context of cooking. Probably none of us will enjoy having a spoonful of black pepper. However, we know how much black pepper can really help to enhance the flavor of the foods when we use it as a condiment. A bit of the same really happens with some of these more stronger flavor oils. But the other characteristic that happens, these oils go really, really well with salad, especially this last one, more bitter, goes really, really well with bitter salad, kale, arugula. The combination is fantastic. And I have, again, one little trick that you can play later on with some of the oil that you got left over, which is use and pick a small, thin slice of dark chocolate, probably 70–80% cocoa. With that dark chocolate, what we do is we, pour oil on top of it, or we dip the chocolate into the oil. And then when we eat it, the interesting thing is that the mouthfeel, it's much more similar to that of milk chocolate than what it is to dark chocolate. So you may be thinking, okay, what's going on? What happens with all those bitter flavors in the oil and the bitter flavors in the chocolate? Well, those bitter flavors, both in the chocolate and the oil, are given by those natural antioxidants. And what happens is the fat in the oil tends to cover those bitter flavors and antioxidants in the chocolate, and the fat that is naturally in the chocolate covers those antioxidants in the oil. So you get all the flavor with a bit of a toned down version of the bitterness, which is something that chefs normally play with and do in the kitchen. In fact, dark chocolate olive oil mousse is quite a thing. And that's one of the main reasons you get all the creaminess of that without the bitterness. I mean, it's not the only way of doing it. You probably have plenty of examples when you're having a coffee with milk, where the role of the milk is pretty much through the fat in the milk to tone down some of the bitterness in the coffee, and you end up having a flavorful product that is quite balanced. The same role plays in the extra virgin olive oil. The last of the good oils that we like to try is our 100% California Select. It's sort of with a darker label. And this is more of we call it a premium offering. Still, we're going to get the same levels of freshness and cleanness in the mouth. But certainly this is an oil that in shows will win Best in Show or golden medals. And you may be asking, okay, what is that the judges look for to give an oil a gold medal or Best in Show? Essentially, they do look for the same things that we've been looking before, that the oil has to be fresh, has to have nice aromas, has to be very clean in the mouth. But they also look to aspects like complexity. So if when you are smelling it, you're getting lots of different aromas at the same time that are quite interesting, that is a great tick for make an oil that is good to be like absolutely excellent. And also the overall mouthfeel, where you're not only after freshness, but also a bit more of a balanced overall feeling. And hopefully you're going to be able to notice it with this oil. Straight away, like really, really nice uplift notes. There's definitely fresh cut grass. That's normally something that even new tasters are quite accustomed to smell, because of, you know, mowing the lawn is something that we all do or see the neighbors doing, and we are very familiar with that flavor and that aroma that comes through. In this case, also we got some hints of that green tomato that we had in the second oil, but also it's complemented with a fair bit of what I would describe as green tropical fruit. There's a bit of green mango, green guava notes in there. So it's a bit of a strange combination of some sweet notes with a lot of green notes as well. So that's what we're talking about when I describe, you know, complexity. And then we take a sip. Really, really nice. It has certainly quite peppery, quite bitter, but quite balanced with that level of fruitness on the top. It's almost like a creamy feeling on the mouth. Not just fresh, but quite creamy. It's almost like, you know, scooping the last bit of the melted ice cream in a pot. It is a really, really nice oil. Very, very fruity. It's a fantastic oil to use with anything, but especially with those dishes where the oil is going to be the star of the dish. You know, it could be in a toasted bread, you know, almost like a bruschetta style, or just simply tossing pasta with this oil, a bit of garlic, a bit of parsley, a bit of truffle if it's the season. But really, when the oil is the source of the dish, or even if we're going back to dessert, another tricky one, you know, you're going to have a scoop of a really nice vanilla ice cream. Chop really finely a bit of basil or a tiny bit of rosemary, honey, and pour this oil on top. And again, the oil helps to actually tie together some of those sharp green notes like the rosemary or the basil with the creaminess of the vanilla ice cream, and the sweetness of the honey, and really sort of lift the overall thing quite nicely. So some tricky things, quite simply. Hopefully there's enough of that oil on the bottles that then you can try and play with them. It just gives you that additional idea of the versatility of extra virgin olive oil, that not only you can cook with, but you can use obviously as dressing, salads, you know, dip in bread, but at the same time can be used even for desserts, really having that full flexibility of the range. The idea of doing this sort of tasting through milder to more robust oils was actually to give an example of how different, you know, extra virgin olive oil, good quality extra virgin olive oils can taste like, which is something that sometimes we're not actually quite familiar with. And personally, for example, at home, I will have at least 2 different oils. One is the more robust type, which I really, really like, that I use for general cooking, and one more of this sort of more finishing, you know, sauce style, just to get to that top. I'm seeing some of the comments coming through, so I'm actually quite happy that you are enjoying the oils that we're tasting. But regretfully, as I said before, in the marketplace, there's a lot of oils that are actually not of this high quality, and I think it's important that we actually understand and learn how to recognize them. So I'm not going to let you go before tasting and comparing these oils that we tasted before with an oil that is not of great quality. This is, you know, the example that we have as a low-grade oil. There is nothing wrong with this oil, you know, from the health point of view. It's just the quality aspect. No one would be sick or will have problems by trying it. But I just thought it would be important that you have a point of comparison when we're smelling and tasting fresh notes versus what it is not. So then when you go to a restaurant, when you check in any bottle of oil, it's a lot easier to distinguish, oh yeah, it is a good oil or it is not. Straight away, when we are smelling it, we don't get any fresh notes. And probably some, I mean, if you've been having olive oil, probably some of you may think, oh, this actually oil, it smells like an olive oil that I've been having, or it smells like olive oil that I smelled before. This is not uncommon, you know, particularly in countries outside producing countries, like in the USA, or there was a case in Australia many years ago, this was actually a very normal type of oil to get on the shelf. Get some humid notes, slightly almost like an old cardboard, wet cardboard. It's a bit of like some old nuts. So again, definitely not fresh, notes in there. And then we take a sip. Definitely very different. You get what I was meaning about that oily feeling in the mouth. Probably almost straight away you feel in your lips as if you put lipstick or some of the lip balm. Very oily, greasier in the feeling. And this is not a particularly bad one. It can be much worse. But I didn't want to be too bad for you in the tasting. So in this case, it just helps to contrast between the freshness, the subtle, nice, clean notes of high quality extra virgin olive oils and what you can get in an oil that is not definitely of that quality. Some slight fermented notes in the flavor, a bit like an overripe fruit, but at the same time, some of those sort of more rancid notes in the flavor, a bit like a Play-Doh or crayon or waxy feeling. They're all indicators of such a good quality extra virgin oil. And probably the most important thing is not only that oils that taste like that will not taste great or will not help the food taste better, but also are normally linked with having lower antioxidants and lower some other compounds that actually help extra virgin olive oil to be the healthy oil that it is, and that Kirsten is going to be talking about in the next few minutes. So this is actually the nutshell of everything that I wanted to talk about today. Hopefully you enjoyed the tasting. I leave you now in great hands with Kirsten. It's going to really help to link a bit of what I described with the tasting with what it means in terms of the impact that will have in our bodies. So thank you very much for joining us, and leave it with you, Kirsten. I think you're in mute.
You're absolutely right.
All right.
Okay. Can you guys hear me? Can you hear me?
Perfect.
Okay, perfect. Okay, wonderful. Let me put this. I'm having a little sign that I was on mute. So thank you, everyone. I am so excited to be here. That was an amazing tasting. And one of the things that I thought of, and I was looking at everyone's comments and some of the questions that came in, was thinking about the health benefits with the more robust flavors, right? So when we had some of those all of those great high quality oils, in my head as a registered dietitian, really thinking about the polyphenol content and thinking about all the benefits that we have seen in science. This is very evidence-based in terms of when you get those great polyphenols and how that interacts in the body. So let me kind of just start high level with that before we even get into some of the slides here. We are in a world where people love to talk about superfoods, right? People love to talk about superfoods. I get this question all the time from my patients in the media. What's the trending, what's the cool superfood right now? And so I think that when I think about, and this is always my answer, when I think about the ultimate superfood, and you might think a dietitian would be like kale, right? It's like what everyone thinks I'm going to say. It is extra virgin olive oil, because the studies that we see are incredibly robust in looking at the benefit to reduced rate of mortality. So that means it actually helps with longevity, cardiac, anti-inflammatory benefits. There was some discussion about the comparison to ibuprofen with some of the compounds in olive oil. So there is plenty of anti-inflammatory benefits here. And disease starts with inflammation. That's where all disease starts. So I just wanted to say that high level. If we're thinking about what is the ultimate superfood, you just had a few tastes of it. You got the tablespoons of it, you're getting the benefit of it, and that benefits your health. So make it count when you're thinking about your overall diet quality, and this is the way to do it. So let's just I look at this slide and I think ounce for ounce. where am I going to get the most benefit? Where am I going to get those polyphenols that I was just talking about? Clearly, we're going to get them in extra virgin olive oil. And again, looking at the testing of this brand, we know that there's a high content of it. So there's a lot of other things we get in here as well. We're getting some vitamin E. Vitamin E has been found to be a really potent, very strong antioxidant. So just if you remember back to biology, antioxidants go in, they're like scavengers and they take away free radical formation. Free radical formation can lead to things like cancer, chronic conditions, heart disease, things like that. So anytime you can get something to kind of grab that and get rid of it, you want more of it. So that's an antioxidant, and vitamin E is one of them. There's another compound here by the name of squalene. You might not have heard of this. You can find it in olive oil. You also find it in sharks, but olive oil is really one of the great sources of it because it's an easy way to get this. So when we look at how this is used, and it's a lipid, by the way, it is used in skincare. It is used in making our skin beautiful and making it dewy and all of these benefits that, not to be sexist, but women typically are looking for in these expensive creams that we're buying. So we can get that in extra virgin olive oil. So this is another component. And of course, that high polyphenol component. So as we look at this slide, you'll notice that as we go into imported extra virgin olive oil, that goes down. The polyphenol content. And then definitely when we look at olive oil that is coming imported, that's not extra virgin, the quality goes down significantly. So there was some analysis that was done. It was fascinating. I actually wrote a whole Today Show article about this, and there will be one of your references here, but looked at the fact that a lot of these imported oils that are coming in, they are not meeting the quality standards, like 70 to 80% of them. That's a huge percentage. So something to think about when you're at the point of purchase, when you're in that grocery store. You have so many choices in terms of oils in general. You can see that here on the slide, but in terms of extra virgin olive oil. So I think the advice that was given in the guidance is really useful. Rice bran oil, you don't really hear about this one too much. Again, it doesn't have all of the benefits we're going to see in the extra virgin olive oil. And what I think when I'm looking from left to right on this slide is what is processed, what is refined, right? We don't have any of that with extra virgin olive oil. And someone had made this comment that, oh, the rancid one that we had at the very end, would have been okay had I not tried the other ones already. So this is a great example of that. Like you kind of don't even recognize or realize how amazing taking a cup of olive oil and sipping it can be until you have the really good quality stuff. So when we think about quality, I want us to think about the benefit as well. Canola oil, which is coming the same thing from rapeseed oil, that is usually ultra refined, ultra processed, not really great. We haven't talked about this to a large extent, but a lot of my patients will say, well, I have to use canola oil or coconut oil, and we'll talk about that in the next slide, because of the fact that I need to go more high heat in my cooking. So we haven't talked a lot about cooking, but I've had the opportunity to work with so many chefs that use extra virgin olive oil in a lot of their cooking, even at higher heats. So I think that's kind of a myth that we're thinking, oh gosh, can't use this because it's not high. I really don't want to be cooking on a regular basis at a high smoke point either, because sometimes it can take a healthy fat and turn it to more of an unhealthy fat. So this is why we want to roast nuts and seeds and things like that to death. Let's look at some other benefits of extra virgin olive oil. So again, this is all evidence-based. This is all coming from the studies. One of the things that really resonated with me, and we'll have a slide in a few minutes on the Mediterranean diet, are the benefits that we are relating to improvements in blood flow. So that's at the top right. Why improvements in blood flow? Well, we know that some of these polyphenol contents, these high contents, actually help with blood moving through the system. And because of that, we have seen so many studies that look at the inclusion of extra virgin olive oil and a reduction in risk of cardiac events and overall cardiac mortality. So reducing our risk for heart disease, right? Heart disease is the number one killer in the United States. And when we look on a global perspective, it's up there. So when we look at that, what can we do to help reduce this risk of heart disease? I'll go back to this conversation I have with patients on superfoods. And many of them will show up in my office with like 15 supplements and say, well, I heard all of these are great for our heart. where really we could have just gone and made the investment in some extra virgin olive oil, right? That would have been a better investment in our health. Wait, why weight make a difference here? And how do we achieve that? Anytime we have a fat, so again, keep in mind what I'm saying, you want to make your calories work. You want to get bang for your nutritional buck. So if I'm going to have a fat, I'm going to choose the good stuff. I'm going to choose an extra virgin olive oil. Anytime we have a fat, the body has to get that fat through and then out of the system, metabolize it, break it down, etc. It's not really an easy thing for the body to do. And so fat typically will delay gastric emptying. That means we are fuller longer. So when we add fat to any type of meal, it actually increases our satiety. We feel more full, we eat less, right? So there's this myth that has been debunked multiple times in the past decade that fat makes us fat. It doesn't. In fact, fat helps to keep us full. And we now know, based on a lot of research, that that was wrong thinking, right? Fat actually helps us in our overall weight management. And it has been a godsend to many of my type 2 diabetic patients because it's not going to increase their insulin and their blood sugar. So that's another one. Lowering of blood pressure, that has a lot to do with the blood flow and the cardiac benefit. Lowers oxidized LDL cholesterol. This is a key one for extra virgin olive oil, because as you'll see in a slide in a few minutes, when we compare extra virgin olive oil to something like coconut oil, which I like to say like kind of had its time on the stage, but now people are realizing otherwise, extra virgin olive oil helps to improve our lipid panel. So if you're someone who has dyslipidemia, your LDL is high, your HDL is low, your total cholesterol, your triglycerides, those are higher. Extra virgin olive oil has been found to bring LDL down. Coconut oil has been found to bring LDL up, right? So we want to bring LDL down, and extra virgin olive oil can help with that as well. Improvement of blood glucose control. This has a lot to do with what I was just referring to in terms of looking at the fact that when we have something, you just had some amazing, beautiful sips of this, it doesn't increase our insulin or we are then the path toward reducing other factors in our diet, of course, and other lifestyle things. So daily, how much do you need here? 2 to 3 tablespoons. And I also want to say, again, it's not just the healthy fats that are the benefit here. It is the polyphenols. It is these amazing antioxidants that we're getting. And we get this in a lot of fruit, in red wine. So when you see studies on that, it is the same compound that we are finding in extra virgin olive oil. All right, we can go to the next slide. I'm always worried I'm going to talk too much and we won't have enough time for a conversation. And I could talk all night about this because I love it. So let's look at this comparison between coconut oil and canola oil. And I wanted to show this comparison because I think that, at least in my patient base, people still have this in their diet and they want to know, is this good or bad? Coconut oil especially, right? Coconut oil has gotten a lot of press, but let me tell you what it hasn't gotten: a lot of science. So we don't have the science to back up the enthusiasm about coconut oil. A lot of people think that coconut oil is like the next big thing because it's got MCT oil. But when you look at independent tests, we know that it really doesn't have a tremendous amount. So that's kind of number one. Number two, I brought up the lipid panel component, and that's really important. A lot of people that talk about inclusion of coconut oil will say, well, it raises HDL. So that's such a great thing. And then, but it also raises that LDL. So when we think about our HDL LDL ratio, we want HDL to be high and LDL to be low. If they're both high, we lose that protective mechanism that a health ratio can have. What about canola oil? Canola oil, I will go back to this, typically very highly refined, very processed. If you do want to find a high quality one, it is really hard for the average consumer in the grocery store to find that out. So again, if we go back to this concept that I started with, if we look at our diet and say 90% of the time, I want to get bang for my nutritional buck, I want to have something that makes sense, that counts, that helps me live longer and better, there's no reason to really think outside of an extra virgin olive oil and even look at some of these oils, because we don't really have the negative data like we do in some of these other ones. Yes, you have to go in there and you have to make that decision. And now you've got the education to really know how to do that. But there's only upside for it. And as you can tell, and from the comments I've seen, the taste is amazing. Like I was actually on that one. Okay, we can go to the next slide. All right. Okay, here we go. So let's take a quick look here at the Mediterranean diet pyramid. So we've put some references for you to look at, but let me just tell you, in the past just 2 months, there have been some amazing studies looking at a Mediterranean diet pattern. Where I have been the most impressed is looking at some of these big studies that are examining the inclusion of a Mediterranean diet and lowering the risk of dementia and Alzheimer's. The latest study, which I have this reference for you and your resources, showed that the risk of dementia was significantly reduced, even in individuals that had a genetic predisposition for dementia. That was really incredible. That was one of the first times we've seen a study like that that really showed, oh my gosh, this can really be something I can have. So when I work with individuals that are either following a Mediterranean or a MIND diet, okay, the MIND diet, the combination of the DASH diet and the Mediterranean diet, okay? And it is really based in terms of, if you're looking for a perfect, don't look for something that is necessarily trending. Look for the one that has the most science in humans, the most randomized controlled trials, the most benefit. So Mediterranean diet's going to be it. Extra virgin olive oil is a huge component. We can go to the next slide, and we're waiting for the slide. 2 other big pieces of data that are coming out looking at the Mediterranean diet are also examining the benefits to fertility and then also examining mental health. So this is an area called nutritional psychology. So when we look at depression, anxiety, we have so many pieces of data now that are looking at the association of a Mediterranean style diet and reduction in risk or symptoms of depression and anxiety. That's pretty amazing. This is new data, but it's pretty amazing. When I say new, I mean in the last 10 years. Okay, my last slide, how do we get this 2 to 3 tablespoons? Well, let me just tell you how easy this is. You just got it. So if you had a good sip, then you probably would have got at least 2 tablespoons, maybe 3. I love how there was a suggestion about using it on ice cream. I was writing all of that down because I'm thinking that would be a great thing to really show my patients. If you're going to have ice cream, do that. So I just love that idea and how all the flavors come together. Salad dressings, obviously, things like that. Replacing butter. So if you're someone who loves butter, if it's grass-fed, replacing it with extra virgin olive oil will definitely, I would say, based on the studies, help you in being able to achieve maybe a longer life. And you have to look at other lifestyle, but that's a really huge component. So replacement is going to be a big one. Adding it as a quick vinaigrette, just adding it really everywhere. I mean, when I make a dish, regardless of what it is, I am always just drizzling some olive oil on top because I'm thinking about the great antioxidants, the benefit I'm going to get because of that. So just love this. Okay, let's go to the next slide so we have enough time. I know you guys have a lot of questions. All right. I left 7 minutes. I could have talked for another 20, but I think we'll bring our team back on and then see what questions are asked here. And I just want to mention too, I saw Joe mentioning NAFLD, non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. That's a huge one too. I actually, I wrote a book on NAFLD. I have another one coming out, and extra virgin olive oil is a huge component of all my dietary plans. This is something that's impacting over 30% of the global population. So I'm glad you mentioned that.
Thank you. Thank you, Kirsten. There's a comment that came up about, flash point or smoke point, which I think is quite relevant to cover it. So first of all, flash point is the point that the olive oil actually will catch fire, or that the oil catch fire. It's not necessarily normally relevant. Sometimes what the people refer to a lot is to smoke point and the ability of an oil to be able to use for cooking. This is very important to explain, because the reality is that there's not a proven relationship between smoke point and the ability of an oil to withstand prolonged heating period, which is what happens during the cooking process. And normally the more stable oils for cooking are those with a higher level of monounsaturated fats and even with some antioxidant, which is the case of extra virgin olive oil. So somehow there is this myth that you cannot cook with extra virgin olive oil. There is no scientific evidence to show that is the case. In fact, it's the opposite. It is one of the most stable oils to be used for cooking. And although some of those natural antioxidants in extra virgin olive oil gets destroyed during the cooking process, the heating process, there's still plenty left, and essentially there's a lot of them that are migrating into the food that you're cooking within the oil to justify the use. The question about the temperature, essentially extra virgin olive oil can be heated at any of the normal cooking temperatures, including deep frying, which is one of the hottest temperatures that normally go for, without any issues in the normal context of cooking. A lot of the trials that we have done even goes on for more of a commercial type of cooking, going on for 36 and up to 48 and 72 hours on a commercial deep fryer. And still is, in comparison with some of the other normal oils that get used, like canola oil, there is certainly a much more stable product and produces less of the products of degradation that happens in the oil after you cook for a long time. They normally get called polar compounds. Some of them are not good for us, but essentially more stable oils tend to produce less of those products in the same period of time. The same point obviously goes to grapeseed. Grapeseed, in fact, misleadingly is promoted as a great oil for cooking because it has a high smoke point. In fact, grapeseed is one of the less stable of all the oils, and actually shows some of the higher rate of production of polar compounds, when cooking. I think there was also a point around storage of the oil, and this is fantastic. This is true for all oils, not just extra virgin olive oil. All oils should be stored in a cool, dark place because obviously light and temperature will accelerate the oxidation of the oil, regardless of the type of oil. That happens to all of them. And certainly in the case of extra virgin olive oil in particular, ideally you would like to use the oil once the bottle is opened within 4 to 8 weeks. So the suggestion is, buy whatever size of packaging your family would use, within that time frame of 4 to 8 weeks, because after that, obviously, once you start using oil, there's a larger surface to volume ratio. The oils will get oxidized a bit more. That nitrogen, blanking that we have on the headspace will be gone, so the oils will be oxidizing a bit more. The same happens also with seed oil. So probably if you have a seed oil sitting on your cupboard for months, most likely if you go and smell it and taste it now, you're going to have pretty strong rancid notes, and that's something that is not ideal. You want to keep your oils in the kitchen actually quite fresh. I'm just looking through the questions and see if I can find something else. Quite interesting, the question about replacement of butter. I mean, certainly in Spain, we're very common to use straight olive oil, on the bread. But a funny trick is if you put extra virgin olive oil in the fridge, let's say inside a pot in the fridge, it will go solid. And because of the fatty acid profile, so then you can actually take it out and use it and spread as a butter, and won't be actually much different on that. Or you could be using a different combination of ratios, based on whatever you like. But from the texture point of view, putting some olive oil in the fridge will go solid and naturally will almost look like butter. In the case of the comparison with avocado, this avocado oil, it's a very particular one. It depends a lot if it's extra virgin or virgin avocado oil, or if it's refined avocado oil form. The virgin form of avocado is actually quite good and fairly stable, not as much as the extra virgin olive oil because of the lack of antioxidants. Avocado doesn't have as many antioxidants as olive oil. That's why avocado doesn't taste as bitter or pungent as an olive. But from the fatty acid profile, they're actually quite similar. On the refined forms, once you start treating the oil with chemicals and temperature, they actually make the oils less stable over time with cooking. So that's probably one of the differences. I think that we are probably about in time to close it for the hour.
Well, thank you everybody for joining, and taking up the evening to do this. As you'll see on the screen, we do have a discount code that can be used to purchase the product online, but we are available in a variety of retailers as well, nationwide, Walmart, Target, your Safeways, you name it. So we hope that you'll take advantage of the learnings tonight and visit us online or at the local stores. Also a big thank you to Leandro and Kristen for taking the time on this education, and hopefully we've all learned a little bit more tonight. Like I said, we will be following up tomorrow with a recording of tonight's experience. Feel free to share that with friends and family. And then we'll also be announcing the winner of the full year supply of Cobram oil. Thank you again, and everybody have a nice evening.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.